Tonight in 9 News, court battle. Novak Djokovic's COVID claims called into question as the federal government pushes to postpone tomorrow's case. A delay in the return to classrooms ruled out as Omicron makes up 80% of Victoria's cases. A Heathmont man's incredible tale of survival after being trapped by a massive eucalyptus tree. Fears for a missing teenager as floodwaters cause havoc in Queensland. Parade cancelled, the Victorian government accused of playing politics over Australia Day. And Ashes warning sign ahead of the Open with a crushing victory in Adelaide.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Dougal Beattie.
Good evening. The Home Affairs Minister has tried to postpone the ruling in Novak Djokovic's court case tomorrow as a legal expert predicts the federal government will try to drag out the saga. It'll be decided if Djokovic is allowed to play at the Australian Open unvaccinated based on a previous COVID infection, which he seemed to ignore for days as he mingled with the public. Adam Hegarty reports.
By his own admission, this is an infectious Novak Djokovic on the day he tested positive. Then, 2 days later, he's on stage. A week later, a hit of tennis with a fan when presumably he should have been isolating. And yet, that previous COVID infection could be his ticket into the Australian Open unvaccinated, even if Home Affairs tries to block him.
There's a very high likelihood that the Commonwealth would seek to appeal this matter if they were to lose, which would just further extend proceedings again.
Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews already failing to postpone tomorrow's hearing as supporters offer their verdict. Around 100 protesters, some anti-vax, rallying outside Kirribilli House, as others have done at Novak's detention hotel. Novak's lawyers will argue it was procedurally unfair and legally unreasonable to cancel his visa, though the 35 pages of their legal argument paint no one in a good light. Novak claims he tested positive on December 16 before being photographed posing with children maskless at an awards ceremony and at a photo shoot for a French newspaper. As for the federal government, the lawyers claim it's changed its tune, granting a visa to Djokovic on November 18 before writing to him on January 1 saying he met the requirements for a quarantine-free arrival into Australia. But, perhaps crucially, it's where permitted by the jurisdiction of your arrival, that being Victoria. And then there's Tennis Australia. Novak's lawyers say it gave him a medical exemption to vaccination on December 30, even though the deadline for every other player was December 10.
Certainly, I think the Australian authorities are responsible for what has happened. They have not been clear in what they've done, and they seem to have moved the goalposts.
A complex case, but the judge will rule on a simple question. Does a previous infection automatically grant a vaccine exemption?
That becomes the critical legal and factual issue, it seems to me.
Tonight we have reporters outside Djokovic's hotel and in Serbia. First to Adam Hegarty. Adam, there's been another bombshell in the Djokovic detention saga.
There has been, Dougal, sure to add fuel to the fire, no doubt, for the Novak fans gathering for the fourth night in a row outside the hotel here in Carlton. We've seen a letter from Victorian Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton to Tennis Australia tonight. It indicates that he believes that it is a valid exemption to have a previous COVID-19 infection if you're unvaccinated, and it indicates that Novak Djokovic should have been allowed in. Further to that, we're also seeing reports tonight that Tennis Australia pleaded with the federal government to check Novak's documentation on his visa application before he entered the country. Potentially, Dougal, that could have avoided this whole saga. Instead, we're up for a very, very long court case tomorrow.
There's a lot happening. Adam, thank you. Now to Europe correspondent Brett McLeod, who is in Belgrade. Brett, tomorrow's hearing will be in the middle of the night there, but Serbians will be watching closely.
Well, there certainly will be, Dougal. It's -1 degree here at the moment. Things get even frostier when you mention the Australian government because of the way their favourite sporting son, Novak Djokovic, is being treated right now. There'll be another rally here today at the National Assembly, as there has been each day, with his parents here. His father yesterday saying he feels his son's detention is a political decision by the Australian government. They will be gathering tonight to watch the court decision, or at least live stream it. Whatever the outcome there, whichever way it goes, the fact that the world's #1 tennis player, and the man that some people say is the greatest of all time, is still in detention, well, that won't be forgotten anytime soon here in Serbia. Dougal?
Brett McLeod reporting live from Belgrade. And Tennis Australia CEO Craig Tiley will speak exclusively to 9 News to break his silence over Novak Djokovic's detainment saga shortly. More than 80% of the state's new COVID cases are now being confirmed as the Omicron strain, with Delta slowly petering out. Despite significant community transmission, the acting Premier says at this stage there's no change to the return to school. Mimi Becker reports.
Victorians are well and truly riding the Omicron wave, and we're being warned there is still more to come.
We're expecting to continue to see this high positivity rate over the days ahead.
30,000 rapid antigen tests have been handed out for free, while 7,000 people's PCR tests had to be thrown out due to a 7-day delay in testing by Melbourne Pathology.
I have a lot of sympathy for it because clearly the increasing value of a test that is that old is it's significantly diminished.
Of the 44,155 new cases, more than 22,000 were PCR results, with just over 22,000 rapid antigen tests registered in the last 24 hours.
9,000 of those rapid antigen results were for tests taken yesterday, so around 40% were for tests actually taken yesterday. 4,000 were taken on Friday, a couple of days ago, and 2,000 were taken up to 4 days before.
The number of people in hospital has jumped by almost 300 people this week. Now 752 people are being treated, 58 people are in ICU, and 23 require a ventilator to breathe.
Sadly, 4 people lost their lives yesterday as a result of COVID, each in their 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s.
New South Wales recorded their deadliest day. 16 people died from COVID, with 30,062 new cases, while Queensland today announced it will delay the start of its school year by 2 weeks.
It is not desirable to have our children back starting school during the peak of this wave.
But in Victoria, children will be back in the classroom.
We have no announcements to make around the return to school other than we are working towards school resuming.
Omicron is less severe. We can manage. I think it's possible to get as many children back to school as possible for their mental health, for their education, for their exercise, for their socialisation.
Child Pfizer will be available for 5 to 11-year-olds from tomorrow. 36 family-friendly state-run hubs are ready to welcome the primary school students. There's even lollies and vaccine goodie bags on hand to help ease the nerves.
I'm really excited.
Live to Mimi Becker outside the Royal Exhibition Building. Mimi, appointments are still available.
Dougal, 46,000 appointments specifically for Child Pfizer in state-run hubs are still up for grabs this week. People are also advised to check in at their local pharmacy or GP. And when it comes to booster shots, well, just over 16% of Victorians aged over 18 have had 3 doses of a vaccine. Many people are booking online and dozens more are walking in, like here at the Royal Exhibition Building today. Now, neither of these things, the Child Pfizer vaccine or a booster jab, have been mandated under the state's pandemic laws, which today were extended for another 3 months. Dougal.
OK, Mimi Becker, thank you. A clothing store in Broadmeadows is facing a lengthy clean-up after a car crashed through their window. Police believe the driver of the Toyota accidentally pressed the accelerator instead of the brake, causing the car to surge forward into the Rivers store on Pascoe Vale Road just before 1 this afternoon. The driver managed to escape unhurt. The election campaign has begun in earnest, with the opposition leader touring key seats Labor must win to form government. In an exclusive interview with 9 News, Anthony Albanese has promised free rapid antigen tests for all through Medicare. Eliza Edwards reports.
Banana leaves as far as the eye can see, the tropical paradise of far north Queensland is fertile campaign ground ahead of the federal election.
What are you doing up here?
The Alternative Prime Minister on a mission to convince voters it's time for new leadership.
I think the country just needs a change in direction.
Labor needs to pick up an additional 7 seats to form a majority government and is hoping to win some of those in Queensland. But a disastrous result at the 2019 poll has left a sea of blue in regional parts of the state. The Liberals and Nationals comfortably hold the seats of Capricornia, Dawson and Herbert, but Labor believes Flynn and Leichhardt are in reach.
I believe we'll have a program that will gain strong support here in Queensland.
Sitting down with 9 News, the opposition leader argues the government has mishandled the Omicron wave as cases explode across the country.
Workers unable to go to work, hospitals struggling to have enough staff, and supermarket shelves which are empty.
This is probably the most important challenge that has come from Omicron.
Timely, affordable and available testing is another challenge. Labor has pledged to offer free rapid antigen tests to everyone through Medicare, but won't say if it'll still be party policy come election time.
We think that the crisis is right now and people need access to these tests right now.
Getting your hands on these tests could become a little easier from this week. An extra 7 million are set to arrive for the national stockpile.
The Commonwealth is expecting to be able to provide over the coming weeks 10 million to the states.
In this battleground state and elsewhere, Labor wants an election fight on 2 fronts.
Of whether this government is competent, but it'll be also fought on who's offering a better future for Australia.
Hoping voters will be in his corner when they head to the ballot box by May. Eliza Edwards, 9 News.
COVID outbreaks have sent nearly 500 aged care homes across the country into lockdown and infected more than 1,000 elderly residents in the past 3 weeks. The Health Minister says booster jabs are being rolled out to 2,600 residential facilities ahead of schedule.
At this stage, we have over 1,500 that have received the boosters, and all facilities have either received the boosters or are scheduled on the advice that I have from Operation COVID Shield.
Victoria's COVID Commander Jerome Weimar has confirmed all residents living in public aged care facilities received their booster shots last year. Parts of Queensland are tonight in the grips of a flood emergency. Dozens of locals have been rescued and there are grave fears for a 14-year-old girl who was swept away in floodwater. Jordan Fabris has the details.
It was Maryboro's last line of defence, a levee hundreds of metres long in the centre of town. But this afternoon, Maryborough lost the battle.
So the walls that slow and prevent the water backing up from the river have failed, and the pumps can't keep up with that.
With the town's evacuation siren wailing, business owners rushed into the CBD to save what they could. Tonight, Maryborough is a disaster zone.
It's heartbreakingly disappointing for the businesses here and for the whole community. This changes from 12 businesses to being inundated to perhaps 100. It is catastrophic.
Each of these businesses are being inundated from the ground up, the floodwater rising through the stormwater system. Council predicts it could potentially reach the top of the street sometime tonight.
Right now we're working with all the businesses to get their inventory out and to help sandbag.
Kenny Proudlock managed to get out of his home this morning.
Their home's just on an island, basically, right out there.
He decided to chance his luck at his business, but that was swamped too this afternoon.
Mate, tell you what, we never thought the water was going to come as high as it has. It's full right to the floor. That's all coming in from the back, coming into the people's floors on the other side.
Swift water rescue teams have been swamped.
I was just busy moving everything up so that the water can go through the second level of the house. And I was going to ride it out, but because they've raised the river level expectations, it was time to go.
Locals even manning their own boats to rescue people caught out by the torrent.
And mate, it's not just property that you're saving. You just heard yesterday you saved a couple of kids.
Yeah. And that shakes people up.
But at least one thing about here, everybody's pulling together and helping each other, and we've had to move all the furniture and lift it all up, and
You know, it's been a big effort for a lot of people here.
From the air, you can see the magnitude that confronts locals. The Mary River, twice its size, on par with levels in 2013 and getting wider by the hour. Last-minute sandbagging was a waste of time. Street after street covered in water, home after home swamped. Yachts have broken their moorings, jetties washed downstream.
It's basically just been trying to get boats in a safe position. Like, there's people that basically have not given a rat's. They've seen floodwater coming. What can I do? Their vessels are a danger to public property, they're a danger to other people.
South of town, just near Gympie, hundreds of cars stranded on the Bruce Highway after it was cut again. But right now, all eyes remain on Maryborough, locals holding their collective breath, waiting for what's in store tonight. In Maryborough, Jordan Fabris, 9 News.
Police have charged a man over an early morning ram raid on a northern suburbs pharmacy. Security vision shows the stolen truck reversed through the glass doors of the Pascoe Vale business around 4 a.m. A man in dark clothing then jumps out, rummages around, runs back to the cab and speeds away, leaving a mess behind.
You can see, like in the food works, we got the steel fencing, because it happens all the time and we are just frustrated.
The 35-year-old accused was arrested nearby and is facing 4 charges. The state government has been accused of playing politics over the cancellation of the Australia Day parade for the 2nd year in a row. But the acting premier insists the decision was made because last year's pared-down events were well received. Elizabeth Moss reports.
It's full of flags, snags and face paint.
Australia Day! Have a wonderful time!
But on January 26 this year, there will be no Australia Day parade in Melbourne again. It's welcome news for some.
Well, I think that's a good thing. Jan 26 is not a date that we should celebrate. It represents invasion. It represents genocide to Aboriginal communities.
The state government cancelled last year's main event due to COVID, but a separately organised Day of Morning Dawn service and Invasion Day rally events still took place. The acting premier today denying the government was distancing itself from celebrations on January 26.
No, not at all. This has got everything to do with how, as a community, we choose to mark the day differently.
Insisting last year's Australia Day program got the thumbs up from organisers.
There are a whole range of events, family-focused events, community events that were held in its place. There's a desire to see that format continue.
The opposition not impressed.
This government's all about division and politics. We're not perfect as a country, but we're a damn sight better than the rest of the world. So how about celebrating that? And the National Day is the 26th of January. Just do it then.
This year's Day of Morning Dawn service will be held virtually to ensure safety, and discussions are still underway as to what the Invasion Day rally will look like. As for the state government's planned events, details will be released in the coming days. Some confident there will be a time to come together to celebrate, but not on the 26th.
I think Australians are ready to have the conversation about what a day looks like, where we can build an inclusive Australia, not a divisive Australia.
Elizabeth Moss, 9 News.
Melbourne Victory has promised to ban fans who hurled homophobic abuse at openly gay soccer player Josh Cavallo last night at Amy Park. The 22-year-old Adelaide defender revealed the taunts on social media, saying, "There are no words to tell you how disappointed I was. Hate will never win." Victory has condemned the behaviour and ordered an investigation. Cavallo received worldwide support after he came out last year. Next, with a preview of sport, Ben Stanaway.
Hi Dougal, thanks so much for that. Tonight in sport, a statement win from our own Ash Barty. She is the Queen of Adelaide yet again, but a bigger prize awaits in a few weeks' time. Plus, they're getting close. Can the Aussies secure a famous victory at the SCG?
It would survive the over.
Also tonight, tears for Bree as the Magpies get one over their old foes, and the soccer battlers who shocked their Megabucks opponents. Plus that exclusive chat with Craig Tiley right here on Channel 9. We'll ask him who's to blame for the Novak circus. That's all coming up soon.
Very much looking forward to that. Thank you, Clint. Coming up next in 9 News, thousands of residents left without power and a Heathmont couple trapped after a giant tree collapsed. Plus, Surf Lifesavers called in to help with our hospitals with staff shortages. And life at 180 years of age, why scientists believe it will be a reality for humans. An elderly man is lucky to be alive after a massive eucalyptus tree fell on his home at Heathmont. It cut the power to more than 2,000 homes on its way down, trapping the man and his sick wife for hours. Mark Santomartino reports.
Soaked in days of storms, the roots of this massive eucalypt gave way as Fred Dummett was putting out his bins.
I counted my blessings this morning, son. Have a look at the rail.
His balustrade bent and broken by branches that missed Fred by centimetres.
Panic stations. That was it. And I was lucky that I didn't get hit.
As it collapsed at 10 o'clock this morning, the tree took out at least 6 power lines.
It was a massive bang, like the entire grid just goes zzz. It's really quite scary. Now we've got no internet, no power, no coffee, no cooking.
AusNet technicians managed to get power back to thousands within hours, but the 300 living closest to Washerson Road were only back online by 5 o'clock.
The storms and the wind, I don't know what's going on with El Nino, but it's pretty scary.
The council has trimmed the tree at Fred's request, but neighbours say they should have done more.
Rules being what they are, we can't touch any of them.
I think they're just going to have to dig these power lines underground.
Insurance will fix Fred's home of 30 years, who was thinking only of his sick wife and his prized, now crushed, rose bushes.
It's going to be more than the summer project, I think, Sono, but yeah, we'll have a go at it.
Mark Santomartino, 9 News.
Surf Lifesavers are being pulled away from the state's beaches to help Ambulance Victoria fill roster gaps. Lifesavers, SES volunteers and students are covering hundreds of shifts a week, while paramedics are forced to isolate.
We do need to be on the beach providing those vital water safety services, but this is no different to any other emergency. Last year through winter, we provided flood support to the SES.
It's understood around a third of emergency cases are waiting 15 minutes or more for help to arrive, with many ambulances stuck outside crowded hospitals for hours. A heavy snowstorm has claimed the lives of nearly 24 tourists at a popular winter resort in Pakistan. The icy blast froze roads, leaving people with no way out, as Ruth Wynne Williams reports.
They came to see the record snowfall close up, but bumper to bumper on this remote and winding road, whiteout closed in. Thousands of tourists trapped at the mountainside town of Murree, northeast of Islamabad. A heavy dump more than a metre deep, smothering vehicles and felling trees. Inside these gridlock cars, at least 22 people dead. The country's interior minister leading the emergency response. Overnight, 1,000 vehicles moved. Now, he says, heavy snow clearing machinery is being brought in. The army shifting cars and people on foot. An Islamabad police officer, his 6 children and wife among the dead. They and others believed to have suffered carbon monoxide poisoning, heating their vehicle as the temperature dropped to -8. Winter snow has long attracted tourists to Murree. This year, tens of thousands of people crammed the town before trying to flee. The country's opposition accusing the government of failing to manage the influx. Prime Minister Imran Khan tweeting, unprecedented snowfall and rush of people proceeding without checking weather conditions caught district admin unprepared. But with a popular tourist town so quickly becoming a deadly tourist trap, a high-level inquiry is underway. Ruth Wynne Williams, 9 News.
A freight train hauling methylated spirits is derailed on the Texas-Oklahoma border, sparking a massive fire. 25 cars were set alight with flames jumping from carriage to carriage. It's unclear what caused the accident. The final petal-like mirror of NASA's new $10 billion telescope has unfurled into position. The James Webb Telescope is 100 times more sensitive than its little brother, the Hubble telescope. It will allow astronomers to peer through clouds of gas and dust and effectively back in time to watch stars and galaxies form. Living to 180 years old could be a reality by the end of this century. No one has ever celebrated a 123rd birthday, but data from Canadian scientists predicts some people will be living to 130 by the year 2100. It's thought the most extreme supercentenarians will live to 180. Well, coming up after the break, the horrifying moment a rock slide crushes a boat full of tourists in Brazil. More than a dozen people killed after an explosion inside a busy cafeteria. And the Melbourne Uni is given funding to fight the world's deadliest illnesses. The federal government is providing $63 million to help fight the rarest forms of cancer and disease. In total, 27 grants will be handed out to support clinical trials and new research.
That includes amazing programs on precision medicine being where the individual's specific condition is diagnosed and the medicine is tailored for them.
Among the grant recipients, Monash and Melbourne universities. As we know all too well, rapid tests are hard to come by at the moment, but if you're lucky enough to get your hands on one, are you testing yourself properly? Coming up, some expert advice on how to make the most of your precious supplies. That special report in 9 News a little later. 7 people have died, 3 are missing and 27 more are injured after a giant rock formation crashed onto boats in a Brazilian lake. As Alison Petrowski reports, bad weather is hampering search efforts.
A boat full of tourists desperately trying to signal for attention as they spot rocks sliding down the cliff face. A towering slab slices away and plummets into the water below, hitting 4 boats carrying at least 34 people. Captured from multiple angles, sending a wall of water like a bomb blast in the canyon. We are doing our search work on the surface of the water, in the water with the divers. The investigative work will continue. The remains of the boats below now barely recognisable, officials confirming they are still trying to figure out the identities of some of the missing. The Navy launching an investigation. Furnas Lake, 420 kilometres north of Sao Paulo, is a popular area for tourists. The towering 20-metre high cliffs composed of sedentary rock, making them more susceptible to bad weather. Locals questioning why these holidaymakers were sailing so close to them, given recent heavy rains in the area, already resulting in rock slides, submerging nearby towns, leaving hundreds of residents homeless. Alison Petrowski, 9 News.
A blast has ripped through a busy cafeteria at lunchtime in China, killing 16 people and injuring 10 others. The roof of the business collapsed, trapping workers inside. Emergency teams working through the night to find survivors. A gas leak is the suspected cause. A prominent Saudi Arabian princess and her daughter have been released from jail 3 years after they were arrested without charge. Princess Basma bin Saud's family claims she was targeted because she was an outspoken critic of the kingdom's treatment of women. She had been on her way to Switzerland for medical treatment when she was detained and says she was denied medical care for a potentially life-threatening condition when in custody. Coming up next in 9 News, the experts tell us how to properly take a rapid antigen test. The Duchess of Cambridge strikes a pose for a milestone birthday, and we meet the young tennis lovers preparing for an important role at the Open. Testing ourselves for COVID has become an uncomfortable but necessary reality. Tonight we bring you a step-by-step guide to make sure you're using your rapid antigen tests properly. Sophie Upcroft has the details.
Most of us aren't used to sticking things up our nose, so using a nasal swab can feel unnatural. But if you do it correctly, it shouldn't hurt.
Aiming up, the roof of the nose is very narrow, so it can be really painful. So turning the swab down and back will give you a better direction and a better sampling. So going slowly around the back, following the floor of the nose and then doing a good twirl and then pulling it back slowly.
Pushing 2 to 3 centimetres deep for an adult and no more than 2 centimetres for a child.
If you're doing it with your children, you might give your child a hug while resting their head on your arms.
Nasal swabs are designed to only go up your nose. They shouldn't be used to swab your throat. If you do, this could interfere with your result. Saliva tests are also approved and available in Australia.
Some tests advice that says you shouldn't be eating or drinking for 30 minutes before.
For either test, once you have your sample inside the test tube with the provided liquid, swirl for 15 seconds before placing droplets into the well next to the reader. It is important that you follow these steps correctly, using the instructions in your kit to get the most accurate result. One red line will appear next to the C if you're negative. A second line will appear next to the T if you're positive. This line can be very faint.
A test is never 100% perfect, so you could actually have a false negative. If you do have symptoms, I would recommend to get a more accurate testing with a PCR test.
Sophie Upcroft, 9 News.
The Duchess of Cambridge has marked her 40th birthday with 3 stunning photos. Channeling iconic black and white images of Queen Elizabeth and Princess Diana, Kate looked relaxed in the series taken at Kew Gardens. The pictures will be put in the permanent collection at the National Portrait Gallery, of which the Duchess is a patron. They're the unsung heroes of the Australian Open, and today at Melbourne Park, the Ball Kids were treated to a big surprise. One of the favourites to win this year's Grand Slam, Stefanos Tsitsipas, popped in to say hi, and he came armed with a confession. Clint Stanaway explains.
This is what's known as a tennis roll call. Some of the best ball boys and girls ready to hit the court for the Open.
When you see the players, when someone holds up the trophy, you realise I was a part of that. You know, I helped them get to that moment.
It's always been a dream of mine since the age of 8.
And players like Stefanos Tsitsipas can't thank them enough.
It's been a privilege, thank you.
A big kid at heart, the Greek sensation is one of the most popular players at Melbourne Park. But as a ball kid...
You'd bring your elbow down.
Yeah. He makes a great tennis player.
I was a ball kid in my local tennis club. We weren't as good as you guys. We made plenty of mistakes.
A record 380 volunteers aged between 12 and 16 have been enlisted for this year's Grand Slam. But making the grade isn't easy. From thousands of hopefuls, only a select few are recruited during annual trials.
I was like, oh, I had a good crack at it. I didn't think I did that well, but here I am today.
In 45-minute shifts, they do it all. Fetch towels, trap bugs and deliver balls. In short, they're here to help.
One of my favourites to work with is Naomi Osaka. I was with her a few times last year, absolute nicest player.
From Naomi to Rafa to Ash, they're constantly rubbing shoulders with the best, and all from the best seats in the house.
You see a player and that no one knew about, and then in a few years they could be AO champ.
A small army of legends who always seem to have a ball. Clint Stanaway, 9 News.
And Clint Stanaway is here now with sport.
Hello again, Dougal. Thank you for that. After the break, a 9 News exclusive, tennis boss Craig Tiley to join us here live. Plus silverware for Ash. Now it's time to rewrite history. Time's running out for the Aussies. Can they snatch victory? And the win that felt like a loss for the Pies. Well, as Novak Djokovic prepares to learn his fate in the federal court tonight, Tennis Australia boss Craig Tiley breaks his silence on the fiasco. He is standing by tonight live at Melbourne Park. Craig, good evening. Djokovic is about to spend his 4th night in immigration detention. How on earth has it gone so horribly wrong for him and Tennis Australia?
Well, good evening, Clint. And from the beginning on this journey, we've always stated and said that what's of absolute priority is the safety of Australians, anyone coming in from overseas. And that's why we went on a journey of vaccination for everyone coming in. And actually, during the US Open, only 50% of the playing group was vaccinated. And today it's more than 97%. And that's partly due to the efforts that we made to get everyone vaccinated. However, on the course of this journey, as the introduction of medical exemptions were proceeded with, there was plenty of contradictory information, plenty of conflicting information, and we constantly were seeking clarity from day one to ensure that, one, we did the right thing, and two, that we were able to bring the players into the country against our primary objective of everyone being safe.
Let's dig down then, because it's all about entry requirements. Can you guarantee that all that information that you supplied players was correct?
All the information we had at the time the knowledge we had at the time was supplied to players. Remember, from the beginning we were saying the condition of which you can be assured to coming into Australia is to meet the requirements of the certain vaccines that were valid in Australia and to get vaccinated with those vaccines. And then there's always going to be a handful of people, as it would be with people normally coming to Australia. It's not tennis that require, for medical reasons, exemptions. We worked closely with the Victorian government to ensure that it was actually two panels, two processes that everyone had to go, that not everyone, only a small handful of people had to go through in order for them to be exempt.
Okay,
and that was done and managed through the state government.
So, Craig, who's stuffed up here? Let's not sugarcoat it. Who's to blame?
Well, we're not going to lay the blame on anyone. All I can say that primarily because there's much conflict in information, much contradictory information the whole time. There's every single week we were talking to Home Affairs, we were talking to all parts of government to ensure that, one, we were doing the right thing and we were on the right process with one of these exemptions, but knowing also that everyone coming in had to be vaccinated, and we're at that point. So the conflicting information and the contradictory information that you receive is because of the changing environment. We are in a very challenging environment for everyone that's been involved in this process.
The federal government is blaming you tonight, Tennis Australia. How do you feel about that? Are you a scapegoat?
I'm not going to blame anyone. All I'm going to say is we know what we know what we have in front of us, and we can do the best job we can to do what we did, bring these players in, and the majority of them are in a position now where we've got to this point.
Just one more before I finish. Should Novak Djokovic play the Australian Open?
I would like to see him play the Australian Open, yeah.
Craig, thanks so much for joining us on 9 News tonight. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Craig Tiley joining us there exclusively. Still on the tennis, Ash Barty has taken a confident step towards glory at Melbourne Park with victory at the Adelaide International. Against Elena Rybakina, Barty was barely troubled, claiming the title in straight sets. Here's Braden Ingram.
After a week of near flawless tennis, Ash had one more box to tick, but her opponent was up for a fight.
Oh, wonderful! Rybakina!
Still, Barty remained composed, and it paid off.
That's too big. Break of serve going the way of the Australian.
The world number one wrapped up the first set 6-3 and looked to hammer home her advantage.
Phenomenal. Oh, yes. Wonderful hitting for both players, really.
With power and precision, she cemented herself as the hot favourite come Melbourne Park.
Look out, Australian Open. Ash is coming. Her second title here in Adelaide, the world number one steamrolling her way to victory.
A 14th title to her name. Now it's off to the Sydney Tennis Classic for a final tune-up. She almost doesn't need it.
You guys are fans, have made this week exceptional for me. You've made it so much fun, and you've brought that spark back into my tennis, and I thank you so much for that.
Last night, Thanasi Kokkinakis lost no admirers. The 25-year-old's run ended in the final four by French showman Gael Monfils.
That one lands 3 rows back.
Rafael Nadal is building nicely a week out from the Open. He'll hit Rod Laver Arena tonight in the Melbourne Somerset Decider. The Spaniard aiming for a quick kill in the hope of watching his countrymen in the ATP Cup final against Canada. And you can catch it all live on 9. Braden Ingram, 9 News.
To the cricket, and Australia is in danger of missing its shot at an Ashes clean sweep, with England's tailenders desperately scrapping to the very end on day 5 at the SCG. In the dying overs, the Aussies need just 1 wicket to win. Luke Duffsey has the highlights.
Australia needed to be ruthless on the final day.
This time in action, this time it's down.
This wasn't a good start. Alex Carey made up for his drop 2 overs later.
Edge, and this time he takes the catch.
England's top order looked brittle again.
Yeah! Oh, beautifully done.
Except for Zach Crawley, who scored an entertaining 77 before being trapped by Cameron Green.
Oh, gee, that is out.
That brought Joe Root and Ben Stokes together, England's 2 biggest stars, determined to stop Australia's march to victory.
Takes it on and puts it away beautifully.
When rain rolled in at lunch, play was delayed for an hour, the tourists becoming increasingly hopeful of hanging on.
Stokes, 2 steps, bangs it down the ground to finish the over.
But Root fell just before tea.
Scotty Boland knocks over the England captain again.
Leaving Australia 6 wickets for victory in the last session. Stokes smashed his way to 60 before the danger man was dismissed by Nathan Lyon.
Yeah, got him. He's done it.
Stokes furious he exposed the tail with good reason. Captain Cummins claiming Butler and Wood in the same over.
Very close, it's out.
When Boland got Bairstow, the win was in sight.
Is that it? Is that it? Is it taken? It is!
England's lower order counting down every ball as Australia hunts for a 4-0 lead. Luke Dufficy, 9 News.
We can tell you the cricket has ended in a draw. Acting Stars skipper Adam Zampa has given Cricket Australia a whack. With his team ravaged by COVID, he questioned if the decision to keep playing matches has damaged the Big Bash brand. The Stars were forced to contest Monday's Melbourne derby as scheduled, despite 12 players sitting out having been infected.
These competitions are built on days like that, and I think the Derby Day was taken the piss out of a little bit, and that was because it was set in stone on Jan 3, and that day makes a lot of money for broadcasters in Cricket Australia.
Zampa will captain his side against the Strikers tomorrow, with Glenn Maxwell currently in isolation. The AFLW could be robbed of one of its best players with a suspected ACL injury to Bree Davey. While the Magpies beat the Blues by 21 points at Princes Park, the big story was Davey, who hobbled from the field in tears.
A hush goes over Icon Park with 3 3/4 minutes to play.
And scans are expected to confirm the worst possible news for young Bulldog Isabel Huntington, a victim of 2 previous ACLs. She went down clutching her right knee in the club's 24-point loss to Melbourne.
There's different reasons for the sympathy, but there is obviously they'll gather around her, and whatever comes of it, they'll support her to the hilt.
D's recruit Taylor Harris booting a superb goal in her first game in red and blue. Aussie golfer Cameron Smith is closing in on a wire-to-wire victory at the Tournament of Champions, but he will need to overcome a final round showdown with world number 1 Jon Rahm. The pair hold a share of the lead at 26 under par, Smith producing a faultless putting display with 9 birdies.
Oh, did he? You're kidding me. Come on.
That was insane. That was some really good golf from both of us. We both played really solid. Yeah, the hole was like a bucket for us today.
Rahm started the day 3 shots behind before shooting a course record equaling 61. And Newcastle, now one of the world's richest clubs, has been dumped from the FA Cup by a soccer minnow. Cambridge play in England's 3rd tier but stunned the struggling Magpies with the only goal of the match, the 1-0 win, prompting, as you can imagine, magical celebrations at the final whistle. That's the latest sport for you, Dougal.
Great stuff, Clint. Thank you. Coming up next, we'll have all the weather for the week ahead. To all the weather details now. Melbourne got off to a grey start today, but it didn't take long for that cloud to clear. It was fairly cool though, from a high starting point of 16.1. The city peaked at 21.9. Suburbs north of the city went higher. 28 degrees at Yarra Glen was the warmest, and Epping climbed to 26. There were a few drizzly showers about southern Victoria this morning. Then by early afternoon, it was sunny for most. Temperatures reached the mid-30s in the Mallee, while Bendigo peaked at 32, 27 degrees in Ballarat. Cloud lingered throughout the day in Gippsland and showers developed this afternoon. However, there has been very light and isolated. Further north, a developing low of far north Queensland could intensify to become a tropical cyclone by tomorrow morning. At this stage, the system looks set to cross the coast north of Cooktown, bringing heavy rain and severe storms to the area. For us, it'll be a much warmer day across Victoria tomorrow, but we could see some stormy weather returning with late thundery showers forecast. And that'll be the trend for the next few unstable days. Showers will become more widespread on Tuesday with isolated thunderstorms, and it will be warm and humid at both ends of the day. But first, it'll be another warm one tonight. Mildura will only drop to 21 before heating up to 41 tomorrow. It'll be a hot, sunny day across northern Victoria, warm and partly cloudy in the south with patchy fog in the morning. Many places reaching the low 30s, but it'll be slightly cooler along the southwest coast, just 22 degrees at Aireys Inlet. Isolated showers are set to develop in the west this afternoon. Hamilton could get up to 6 millimetres, 4 at Warrnambool with a few rumbles of thunder. And there'll be possible showers and storms in the eastern ranges. For Melbourne, minimums will range from 12 to 16 degrees. Then most eastern suburbs will climb to the low 30s, 27 or 28 in the west, and southerly breezes will keep Rosebud at 26. From a low of 16, the city should reach 29 degrees. The run of hot nights will continue for at least the next week. It'll only get down to 20 on Tuesday morning before climbing to 27. There is the chance of a shower or two and possible storm, and that humidity will also return. A top of 29 on Wednesday, 30 degrees on Thursday, with the risk of storms and showers increasing. But at this stage, Friday is looking like the weather today with up to 8 millimetres. Then the weekend is looking nice. Showers should clear out Saturday morning before maximums of 27 and 28 degrees. And that is 9 News for this Sunday. Peter Hitchener is back in the chair tomorrow night. I hope you have a great evening. For now, good night.